Some places don't need the dark to feel grim. In southern Louisiana, even the light is just a thin skin stretched over a nightmare that's long since rotted. The swamps here don't reflect moonlight, they devour it. The water lies so still it doesn't ripple, like it's holding its breath for someone hiding beneath the surface. The air hangs thick, reeking of dead moss, garbage, gasoline, dried blood, and secrets no one ever buried. The insects don't make sound, they issue warnings. And the wind, when it shows up, doesn't bring relief. It only carries the slow bleed of cold rising from the earth. One January morning, a body turned up on the roadside near Houma, Louisiana. Black male, early 30s, pants pulled down, ligature marks still fresh around his neck. No ID, no family, no missing person report. Cops showed up, took some notes, and walked away. Probably drugs. Junkies fight all the time. No one knew his name, no one asked. The body was hauled off with no one there to see it go. And Louisiana went on like nothing ever happened, until it happened again. A week later, then a month after that, then another year. One by one, the bodies piled up like trash. Naked, dumped across muddy ditches, highway shoulders, under bridges, or just outside of town. Always men, always black or brown, always the kind no one looks for, and always with marks on the neck. But nobody saw a thing, because those men didn't belong in the picture society wanted to hang in its living room. Police didn't connect the dots. The media didn't know. The public didn't care. So he kept going. Once, then twice, then 23 more times. You'd think a serial killer would make headlines. Some massacre, some twisted freak, some grainy security footage. But in Louisiana, from 1997 to 2006, the state's most brutal serial killer didn't need any of that. He just needed to be in the right place, at the right time. No fingerprints, no special vehicle, no elaborate violence, no obvious mental illness. Just a formula, a pudgy man with a limp, an old car, a few crumpled 20s, a sexual offer, and then a rope in a body. No one paid attention to the victims, and so no one paid attention to him. Invisibility was the perfect armor, and the swamp, it held his crimes like a mother cradling her dead child in silence. Ronald Dominique lived right in the middle of Houma inside the community. He went grocery shopping, sang karaoke at the local bar, ate lunch buffet at the Chinese place near the overpass. People saw him, but they didn't see him. He was a smudge on a windshield, and in a place where black men die without cause. A white, fat, poor, lonely guy, barely registered as suspicious. He didn't scream, didn't threaten, just slipped by. And because of that, he lasted nearly a decade. The Louisiana swamps held his victims like they held secrets. Bodies didn't rot right away. They bloated, floated, and eventually sank. Beneath the black water, skin slid off bone like soaked paper. No names, no voices, no faces. And somewhere down there, part of them is still being strangled forever. You probably have a face in mind when you think serial killer. The wild eyes, the shaking gun, the long knife, the sick smile. like Dahmer or Bundy. But Ronald Dominique didn't smile. He didn't need to. He wasn't insane. He just knew. If you're small enough, invisible enough, and if your victims are seen as low enough, you can kill, then kill again, and then kill some more. And no one will ask why. For 9 years, no one asked why, because there are places where the swamp knows how to keep quiet. And there are people whose deaths don't even ripple the surface. Some deaths don't make a sound, not because they're gentle, but because no one's around to hear them. From 1997 to 2006, in southern Louisiana, at least 23 men died the same way. All of them were male. All of them were strangled. All of them were dumped. On roadsides, in canals, beneath bridges, in vacant lots no one walks through. None of them were found early. None were reported missing right away. None made the evening news. And most of them, no one even bothered to remember their names. So who were they? Not doctors, not straight-A white college kids, not single moms with warm eyes and photos of toddlers clutched to their chests. They were black men. They were drug users. They were gay men, closeted or long past caring. They were homeless. They were ragged. They were shadows lingering at the edge of the road. No papers, no jobs, no family, no dreams. Society called them throwaways. The media called them vagrants. The police called them at risk. Ronald Dominique, he called them prey. He never killed women, never touched anyone who had someone looking for them. He wasn't stupid. He understood what the police pretended not to: kill a gay, black, homeless man, and the body gets skipped. The file drops to the bottom of the pile. No outrage, no protest, no candlelight vigil. Kill once, they call it murder. Kill twice, it's news. Kill 3 times, if your victims are like them, and it's just statistics. One of the earliest victims was Joseph Thomas, 27, used to attend high school in Thibodaux, had a wife and kid, until heroin took hold after he lost his job. They found his body beneath a small overpass off Highway 1, bruising around the neck, pants down, pockets empty except for a broken lighter, and a crumpled piece of toilet paper with the words "God will forgive" scribbled in ink. No one came to claim the body. His mother had passed. His wife left. His child no longer saw him. Police wrapped him in a plastic bag, sent him to the morgue, and forgot about him for 3 weeks. No report, no alert, just another dead man, mistaken for a heat-related accident. Then there was Michael Vincent, 34, openly gay. Used to cut hair at a tiny salon until customers started avoiding him. He couch surfed for a while, then turned to sex work to survive. He vanished one rainy night while waiting for a client near Bourbon Street. A week later, his body turned up in a pile of trash behind an abandoned factory. Police said, probably a violent hookup. No investigation, no crime scene testing, no charges. His friend said, Michael smiled a lot, talked a lot, helped people when he could, but he was born in the wrong time, in the wrong place. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong skin, wrong gender, and now, wrong even in death. But the most painful ones were those nobody even knew. No ID, no prints in the system, no family ever showed. The cops called them John Does. Ronald called them something else, if he remembered. But to the rest of the world, they shoulders, tags tied to dead ankles, unidentified male number 5. A corpse, no name, no voice, not even a history. When questioned about his victims in '06, Ronald remembered every single one. He described where the bodies were found. He recalled what they were wearing. He repeated what they begged before they died. And in a strange, twisted moment, the only person who remembered their lives was the man who took them, not their families, not the state, but the monster who strangled them. Why them? Maybe because they were vulnerable, maybe because they were disposable, maybe because they had no fight left, or maybe because in that final moment, they still believed that this chubby guy might actually be kind. Maybe they thought, at least tonight I'll have a place to sleep, but there was no place, only a cord, a tightening, and a mourning they never woke up to. Their deaths weren't gruesome, no blood, no spectacle, just quiet routine, like a broken clock striking once, then stopping, and then silence, the kind no one even listens for. Ronald wasn't some criminal mastermind. He didn't use chemicals. He didn't stage elaborate crime scenes. He wasn't some cinematic psychopath with a twisted origin story. He just knew, choose the right kind of person, in the right kind of place, at the right time, when prejudice and apathy run deep enough to bury everything. And Louisiana played its part. No one noticed when one man died. No one connected the dots when 5 were gone. And by the time the 23rd body was found, people were still asking, are we sure this is the same guy? Those men deserve to live. At the very least, they deserve to die with names, with someone to claim them, with a candle lit in their memory, not dumped from a trunk like garbage, not erased from paperwork, not forgotten by the very system that was supposed to protect them. But what kind of system exists for those who were never seen as human to begin with? You wouldn't notice him in a crowd, not because he was good at hiding, but because you'd never think to look. Ronald Dominique wasn't anything special. He wasn't attractive. He had no power. He wasn't intimidating. He looked like someone you might have seen once and forgot the second you turned away. A fat white man with bulging eyes, a center-parted haircut, old t-shirts, and baggy sweatpants. He walked with a limp, like he'd just slipped and hadn't recovered yet. He lived in a beat-up trailer parked off a dirt road at the edge of the woods. Each morning, he'd wake up, eat some cereal, watch TV, then wander around Homa in his battered brown car. The kind you see sitting in junkyards, waiting to be scrapped for parts. No one paid him any attention, and that's exactly what made him dangerous. He was born in 1964 in Thibodaux, Louisiana, the kind of place where if you're poor, white, gay, uneducated, and not good looking, your life's already been written. Ronald's childhood was a string of silences, a distant mother, a father who left. He grew up in a tiny house with paper-thin walls, where someone always seemed to be crying at night, and no one ever asked why. At school, he got bullied for how he looked. Fat, short, sun-darkened skin, a voice so soft it sounded like he was talking to himself. Later, they mocked him for being girly. He denied it, tried to act tough, tried to act like a man, sang manly country songs at karaoke bars. But the harder he tried, the harder people laughed. So he withdrew into his own world, a world of daytime TV, cheap porn magazines, and a desperate hunger for acceptance that never got fed. He'd been arrested a few times, petty theft, disorderly conduct, public lewdness, nothing serious, nothing that raised red flags. No mental illness on record, no diagnosis, no glaring signs of violence. Just a lonely man the world left behind, who came to believe that if he wanted to survive, he'd have to take back control. By any means necessary. Ronald had no friends, no partner. No one remembered his birthday. He lived off disability checks, ate canned food, did his laundry every 2 weeks at a coin op near the overpass. Sometimes he tried to chat with people at the bar, but never for long. His voice was weak and his eyes made people uncomfortable. Once he asked a man to grab a beer with him. The guy laughed and snapped, "I don't hang with your kind." Ronald forced a smile, went home, and planned his next kill. He knew he didn't have strength, didn't have smarts, didn't have power, so he hunted in a way that didn't require a fight. He chose people weaker than him, more desperate than him, more broken than him, people who'd say yes at the mention of money, people who'd get in the car, follow him home, and never leave. Ronald knew how to look harmless. He wasn't tall, wasn't ripped, wasn't scary. He offered a little fun to men who needed the cash, spoke softly, never rushed, offered a drink, put on some music, said he'd pay 20, maybe 30, sometimes $40. Just let me tie your hands real quick. The victims agreed, not because they trusted him, but because they saw no reason to be afraid. That was the mistake. A man who'd spent his life being unseen had finally figured out how to make people never forget him. By erasing them from the world, his existence only made sense when he destroyed someone else's, and every body left behind was a message to the world. I'm not weak anymore. Ronald never dumped bodies far from home. He didn't need to. He knew this land wouldn't ask too many questions. He knew the cops wouldn't dig deeper. He believed if his victims were invisible enough, then so was he, a ghost no one could touch. And for 9 years, he was right. People think monsters have claws, fangs, wild eyes, and a guttural laugh. But Ronald Dominique was just a heavy man with shallow breath and a limp, standing in the dairy aisle, sometimes forgetting his change because he was lost in thought. No one feared him. No one paid attention. And that's how he killed at least 23 people without anyone knowing. Ronald Dominique didn't wear a mask, no hood, no knife, no gun, no chainsaw, no torture tools. Nothing like what you've seen in horror movies. Because Ronald Dominique wasn't a movie character. He was real. And the deaths he caused were terrifying precisely because of that. Quiet, bloodless, silent, and traceless. That kind of death is far scarier. Ronald didn't hunt like a predator. He didn't stalk from the bushes, didn't break in, didn't chase. He hunted with kindness, a twisted, bleeding kind of kindness, a soft voice, an easy offer, a look that didn't raise alarms. He found his prey in places other people wouldn't even slow down for. The edge of Bourbon Street, in the dead of night, laundromats at 2 a.m., bus stations where homeless men curled up beside their torn backpacks. He pulled up in an old gray Oldsmobile, the kind of car that disappears in a parking lot, rolled down the window. "Hey, where you headed, bro?" The bait was always simple. "I've got $30. Got a place to sleep tonight?" Want to smoke? I brought some. It didn't have to be clever. Ronald knew. Desperation is the perfect hook. When a man has no bed, nothing in his stomach, no one waiting for him, no one left who believes he matters, then a couch and a few bucks is enough to make him nod yes. Once inside the car, it all played out like any other casual transaction. If anything about this was ever casual. They'd talk softly. Ronald never rushed. He'd turn on the radio, slow, sad country songs drifting in and out over static AM frequencies. He'd drive slowly, take the dirt roads, past fields, beyond town limits. No streetlights, no cameras, no one who'd remember seeing them. Sometimes he brought them back to his trailer, the one he lived in alone, with peeling walls and the smell of damp mildew soaked deep into the couch cushions. A bowl of old noodles on the table, a crumpled lottery ticket, nothing suspicious, just too sad a place for anyone to call home. Ronald pulled out a rope or a shoelace or a cord from a sleeping bag, or sometimes the victim's own belt. He didn't yell, just said softly, "Let me tie your hands, just for fun. It's nothing, it'll be fine." And a lot of them agreed, not because they liked it, but because they were used to giving in, used to being treated like objects, used to saying okay just to secure a place to crash. They didn't know they were about to die. The choke always came suddenly, no warning, no threat. Ronald didn't scream, didn't laugh, didn't rage. He just tightened, with his hands, with a rope, with whatever he'd prepared. Some struggled, screamed, some were too stunned to speak. He held on, always held on. He wasn't strong, but he was persistent. And he knew what it felt like when a body shifted from fighting to fading, and then to nothing. That was when he relaxed. Some were still breathing when he let go. So he'd tighten again, until they didn't. Until the body was cold. Until he was sure no one could turn him in. Then came disposal. It never took long. No elaborate plan. He'd wrap the body in a blanket, or a jacket, or an old sheet, stuff it in the trunk, drive through the night, find somewhere quiet, swampy roadside, an empty lot, the edge of a field, storm drain. He'd dump the body like trash. No ceremony, no ritual, because he knew no one was coming to pick it up. Some bodies surfaced after a few days, swollen, skin darkened, insects hollowing out every feature. Some stayed buried in mud, found only because of the stench or vultures circling above. Some were never found at all. Some, to this day, are still unidentified. Ronald didn't kill for blood, not for thrill, not for some twisted mission. He killed to keep a secret, because he was gay and hated himself for it. He loathed his body, was ashamed of his desire, and he killed to erase the proof of those fleeting moments when he admitted who he really was. Every victim was a reminder that he'd once been vulnerable, so they had to die. Ronald Dominique's crimes weren't just murders. They were a rhythm, a machine, something that became habit, like brushing teeth, washing dishes, drinking water before bed. He killed to stay mentally intact, killed so no one would know who he was, killed to survive, killed so he wouldn't be afraid anymore. No soundtrack opened their deaths. No screaming, no blood spray, no severed heads, just a car pulling over to the curb. An invitation A hand gently touching another wrist, a nod, and then nothing. Ronald didn't need to be clever, just invisible. Didn't need to be smart, just needed to know that if you choose the right victim, you don't have to be good at killing to get away with murder, and so he did. Once, then twice, then 10 times, then 23. No blood, no sound, just a quiet, heavy man behind the wheel, hands still smelling like sweat and rope, waiting for night to fall again, and for someone else to say, "Yeah, sure, I'll go with you." It wasn't that Ronald Dominique was particularly clever. He didn't have some genius plan. He didn't know how to hide bodies, wipe evidence, or stage crime scenes like they do in the movies. No. He just knew no one cared about the kind of people he killed. And for nearly a decade, he was right. The first body was found in 1997, off a dirt road leading into the bayou near Lafourche. Black male, mid-30s to 40s, no ID. Ligature marks around the neck, pants pulled down, no blood, no signs of struggle. Police showed up, looked around, and concluded, could be a drug overdose. Maybe rough gay sex gone bad? No further questions. No deeper look. No connections made. Just another dead body. In a place already too used to poor men dying nameless. 2 weeks later, another body. Not far from the first. Again, a man, again black. Again, no one came to claim him. This time the corpse was floating in a shallow canal, flies spilling from the mouth. The autopsy couldn't confirm a cause of death, but noted strangulation marks and signs of sexual trauma. Police shrugged again. This area is full of vice. Probably gay, probably got carried away. And just like that, case closed. No investigation, no suspect, no follow-up, just one line. Case closed. Unknown male, presumed accidental. The next month, another body, then another, then a year passed. Then 2, then 3. None of the victims had families making noise. No parents crying on TV. No private investigators hired to get answers. No missing person posters. No baby pictures with captions like, "He was once a joyful little boy," because society never really saw them as people to begin with. They were the margins, the ones already broken, the ones whose absence felt more like relief than tragedy. By the time the 10th body turned up, and to us who there was no press conference, no public warning, no FBI involvement, no police chief telling the public, "We're doing everything we can." Instead, someone glanced at the victim profile. Black, homeless, history of drug use, and nodded, not surprising. Nothing is more terrifying than the quiet agreement between cops, media, and the public that some deaths just make sense. No one says it out loud, but everyone gets it. They were gay, they used drugs, they slept on the street, then something probably happened. Their deaths didn't stir sympathy, only a faint sense of inconvenience. Over the 9 years, Ronald Dominique killed at least 23 people died. But the number of cases classified as serial homicide? 0. No federal case files opened, no manhunt for a killer, no cross-parish task force meetings, because no one saw a pattern, or more accurately, no one bothered to look. Some bodies were processed as accidents, some were filed under consensual sex with violent elements, some never even got a full autopsy. They were buried without names, No tears, no demands for justice. If even one of those victims had been a 17-year-old white girl from a suburban family, everything would have been different. There would have been press conferences, helicopters, search parties, surveillance tapes broken down frame by frame, SWAT teams storming the trailer park, podcasts replaying every detail. But for Ronald's victims, they died like weeds crushed underfoot, then disappeared. Society didn't need a killer to take their lives. It just needed enough people to look away. It was the lowered heads, the polite smiles, the shrugs, the not my problem attitude that strung these deaths together like a necklace of too late apologies. Ronald Dominique knew all of this. He counted on it. It's not that he wasn't afraid of getting caught. He just understood. If you pick the right victim in the right place at the right time, you'll be safe. And for 9 years, no one proved him wrong. Not a single person. In 2005, a coroner in one parish started to notice similarities between some of the undetermined deaths. Same victim profile, same marks, same circumstances. She filed a report up the chain. No one responded. An independent medical examiner once said, "When the victim is gay, black, and poor, nobody's looking for the killer." We tend to think the murder is the center of the tragedy, but sometimes the real killer is silence. Silence in the face of pain. Silence in the face of injustice. Silence when someone goes missing. Silence born of the thought, "That's not my concern." And that silence, it killed 23 people before Ronald Dominique ever did. In small southern towns, the rules aren't written down. They're understood in the glance across a bar, in the nod, in the smell of cheap whiskey and red clay sweat. People there learn to stay silent like it's survival. And that silence gave a monster a place to hide. Some crimes don't happen out of cruelty, but out of indifference. Not everyone picks up the knife, but anyone can turn away and let the one holding it finish the job. When Ronald Dominique was finally arrested, the news barely noticed. A few short lines in local papers. No long-form expose. No deep psychological breakdowns. No profiles of the victims' lives. Just one sentence. Gay serial killer apprehended. And that was it. Even in custody, he was misunderstood. Not a predator who hunted the invisible, just a gay man who killed other gay men. Once again, the blame fell on the dead. For 9 years, no one survived getting into Ronald Dominique's car. No one walked out of his trailer. No one lived to tell the story. Until one night, in late 20s, a man, whose name remains protected for safety, did what no one else had managed. He got away. And with that escape, the veil of silence, invisibility, and death surrounding Ronald Dominique finally began to tear. It happened in Houma, Louisiana, the place where Ronald spent the final stretch of his killing spree. The survivor, let's call him Jay, was a drifter in his 30s. Once an air conditioner repairman, he lost his job, picked up a mild addiction, and eventually lost his home. Jay slept in an abandoned car on the edge of town. By day, he panhandled, washed clothes for strangers, and sometimes found comfort in the company of others who were slowly dying like him. He was exactly the kind of man Ronald watched for. Easy to lure, easy to erase, easy to kill. That night, Ronald approached Jay outside a 24-hour convenience store, soft-spoken, polite. He offered Jay a drink, a warm bed, a little money if he came back to his trailer. There's a TV, a soft mattress, some cash if you're down to have a little fun. Jay nodded. The night was cold, and nothing is colder than having nothing left to lose. Ronald's trailer was just as it had always been. Dark, damp, thick with the smell of mold and old urine. He handed Jay a cheap beer, turned the TV to a static flickering channel, then offered to play a little game. He reached for a rope, said, "I just want to tie your hands for a bit, just for fun." Jay hesitated. Something felt off. Maybe it was the way Ronald avoided eye contact. Maybe the grip that was just a little too soft. Or maybe it was that vague street instinct people have when they've almost died a few times before. Jay said no, but Ronald pressed, still soft in tone, but his hands were getting tighter. Jay said again, "No, I'm not comfortable." That's when Ronald's voice changed. No longer timid, no longer gentle. He started barking orders. And then he lunged. Jay fought back, punched Ronald in the chest, kicked him in the knee. Ronald fell to the floor, still clutching the rope. Jay bolted, tore open the door, ran barefoot into the night. He ran through vacant lots, down pitch-black roads, breathing sharp, heart pounding like a war drum. He didn't stop, didn't look back. He just ran, like his life was slipping from his hands, and running was the only way to grab hold of it again. The next morning, Jay walked into a police station. He told them everything: the car, the trailer, the way Ronald talked, the rope, the way his voice turned. For the first time, police heard a living, breathing account of the monster that had haunted southern Louisiana for nearly a decade. For the first time, someone pointed straight at him. Police didn't arrest Ronald right away. Instead, they moved quietly. They took DNA samples from beer cans, from his car door, from his trash, ran them through the system, and within weeks, the system exploded with hits. Ronald Dominique's DNA matched multiple unidentified bodies spanning the past 9 years. Not just one, not 5, but 23. It was the moment the curtain finally dropped. No more theories, no more coincidences, no more hunches whispered between tired, overworked investigators. Everything was right there. The serial killer had been living in the heart of Homa, hiding in plain sight for 9 years, and no one had noticed. In December 2006, Ronald Dominique was arrested. He didn't resist, didn't panic. He just lowered his head and followed them in, just like he'd always been, quiet, unremarkable, a shadow, finally caught in the light. There was no chase, no gunfire, no SWAT raid. Just a pair of handcuffs and a short, heavy man with bulging eyes and sweat-matted hair, stepping out of the nightmare he'd been building in silence. Jay, the survivor, never spoke to the press. No statements, no podcasts, no rewards. He simply vanished, back into the life he had nearly lost. But without Jay, Ronald Dominique might still be killing today, because sometimes, to end a nightmare, all it takes is one person saying, "I saw him, and I won't stay silent anymore." When police brought Ronald Dominique into the interrogation room, they didn't expect much. No confession, no tears, no remorse. But what they got was colder than they ever could have imagined. Ronald didn't need to be threatened, didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't wait to be cornered. He just started talking about every death, every street name, every choking grip, every face that had gone still beneath his eyes, as if he'd carried those memories not as nightmares, but like neatly filed reports stored away in some internal cabinet of the mind. He opened that drawer and started reading. The first one was in 1997. His name was David. Ronald's voice was flat. No rise, no fall, like he was answering questions in a job interview. Met him near the market, offered him $20. He said yes. Tied his hands, raped him, strangled him, dumped the body off the roadside near bridge number 7. Next was Michael. Met him at the laundromat, no shirt on, said he was looking for a place to sleep. Told him to get in the car, same thing. Used his belt that time. I strangled until he stopped breathing. Kept him in the trunk for 3 hours. Took him out, dumped him in a vacant lot, and on he went. No prompting, no pressure, no need to dig. He remembered. He'd close his eyes and the faces didn't come back as ghosts, but as a checklist. Victim 3, about 40, 5'11", 180 pounds, wore a silver chain, met at a convenience store. Victim 4, tried to fight. Ronald had to press his face into a pillow, choke harder. After he died, Ronald left the body in the trailer for a few hours before dumping it. Victim 5, name was Lawrence Green. Big guy, Ronald said, but compliant. When I told him to lie down, he didn't resist. No gasps, no horror, just the recorder humming, and a pen moving slowly across the page, because the truth wasn't just in the number of the dead, it was in the way he told it, like nothing had happened. One detective later said, I've interviewed killers, I've listened to rapists describe what they did, but I've never heard someone talk like that, like they were describing how they grilled dinner. No tremble in the voice, no deflection, no regret, just a hollow space, a bottomless pit, but no echo inside it. Ronald didn't just remember how they died. He remembered how they looked as they died. Some rolled their eyes back. Some wouldn't look at me, kept their eyes shut. One called for his mom. I didn't know her name. Some didn't say anything, just breathed. Sometimes he smiled while recounting it. Not a smirk, not satisfaction, just a meaningless twitch, like someone recalling a routine with At one point, when asked why he only targeted men, he said, because I'm not attracted to women. And I didn't want people to know I was gay. So I killed them, because if anyone knew, they'd laugh at me, like they did when I was a kid. He didn't cry, didn't get angry, didn't defend himself, didn't say I was abused and I was hurt. I didn't mean to. He just said, I didn't want to be found out. So I did the easiest thing to avoid it. I killed them. He confessed to everything, every detail, every body, every dump site, many matching police records down to the exact meter. Some victims had never even been connected to the case until Ronald's confession confirmed their deaths. Another detective said he didn't have a photographic memory. He just carried those corpses around for 9 years, like an addict, always remembering their first hit. He didn't remember who they were, only what he did to them. And that, more than anything, is what made his confession unlike any other killer's. No one asked, "Do you feel remorse?" They didn't have to. The complete absence of emotion was the answer. After 9 hours of confession, Ronald Dominique signed his statement. A messy signature, no shaking hand, no hesitation, no doubt. He signed it like he was endorsing a disability check, something routine without consequence. As he stood up, he turned to one of the detectives and said, "Thanks for listening." Then he smiled, a short smile, empty, and he was led out of the room, no shackles. Just handcuffs and a ceiling light that for once wasn't flickering. He never asked for a lawyer, never requested leniency, never asked, "What's going to happen to me?" Because he already knew. In the end, it wasn't about what was going to happen to him. It was that, finally, someone was listening. And that, more than anything else, was what he'd wanted his whole life. There were no TV cameras, no lines of people waiting outside the courthouse, no protest signs, no applause as the killer was brought in, not a single major journalist in sight. And if you search for news on Ronald Dominique's trial, you'll find only a few short blurbs, buried between local sports updates and hurricane season forecasts. A serial killer caught after 9 years. 23 victims. A full confession. Yet justice arrived in a whisper. The first hearing took place in early 2008. Ronald Dominique appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, hands cuffed at his waist. Same stare, same hunched walk, same limp. He didn't speak, didn't look around, didn't apologize. The prosecution read the charges. Each victim was an indictment: first-degree murder, rape, kidnapping, aggravated assault. 23 counts, read slowly, plainly, coldly, just like he had described the deaths. The killer had spoken of his crimes without emotion. Now the system answered in kind. His court-appointed attorney sat beside him, barely speaking. No objections. There was nothing to argue, no witnesses to call, no DNA evidence to challenge, no confession to deny. The only request: spare him the death penalty. Ronald agreed to plead guilty, not out of remorse, not to save himself, but because he didn't care. "I know I'll be in prison for life," he said. "No need for a trial. I just want this over." His words in court were quiet, flat, almost whispered. The judge frowned, didn't ask him to repeat it. One of the saddest parts of the trial wasn't Ronald's silence. It was the silence of the victims. No family representatives showed up to speak. No one cried. No one called out a name. No one read letters to the lost. Many victims had no one to claim them. Some families didn't know their sons were dead. Some didn't want to come. Maybe out of shame. Maybe out of pain. Maybe because they had stopped considering them family long before they were murdered. In a courtroom with 30 seats, only 8 were filled. 5 were court staff, 2 were detectives, 1 was a local reporter who later wrote exactly 137 words for a county paper no one remembers. No one recalls what Ronald wore the day he was sentenced. No one remembers how many times the judge struck the gavel. No one remembers how long the hearing lasted. But the sentence remains: 8 life terms. No chance of parole. Ronald didn't react, didn't lift his head, didn't shed a tear. He simply stood, walked out of the courtroom, returned to his cell. No one saw him off. No one welcomed him in. The state signed the case file, shut like a coffin lid, without a eulogy. No monument was built, no plaque was placed. No one demanded a full investigation into the policing failures that let him kill for nearly a decade. No expose podcast, no Netflix docuseries, just a cold, clipped line in a small-town paper. Ronald Dominique, 43, pleads guilty to murdering 23 men, sentenced to 8 life terms. And that was it. The truth is, no one wanted to hear more, because hearing more meant facing responsibility, meant admitting that society failed, not once, but 23 times, meant looking into the eyes of the abandoned dead, meant saying their names, meant remembering they lived, and for most, that was too much. So they stayed quiet, they turned the page, they shut off the TV, locked their doors, and carried on, in the false peace they built out of forgetting. And Ronald, in a grim, unbearable twist, became the only one left who remembered them. He knew their names, knew how they died, knew what their final gaze looked like. In a windowless prison cell, he became the last place where those men still existed, distorted, brutalized, but present, because society erased them, because the court never said their names aloud, because no one showed up to fight for them, and the so-called trial for justice ended the same way the murders began, in silence. Ronald Dominique isn't famous. No Netflix series, no 10-part podcast, no cultural icon like Bundy or Dahmer, no reenactments, no splashy headlines, no documentaries. No one's printing his face on t-shirts. No one's writing books, romanticizing his childhood. He isn't remembered, and somehow that makes him the most terrifying embodiment of evil. Because Ronald didn't do anything spectacular. He didn't leave behind manifestos or poems. He didn't hide bodies, didn't stage rituals, didn't perform some twisted theater to get attention. He did just one thing, repeated the same crime against the same kind of victim in a society cold enough not to look, and he got away with it for 9 years. We like to believe evil is complex, that it has layers, that it takes brilliance to be a monster. But Ronald proved the opposite. He didn't kill for a cause, not for art, not for notoriety. He killed because he knew he could, because if you choose the right kind of person, poor, queer, brown, invisible, no one will look for them. And that is the most chilling part. Not that he was cunning, but that society was so predictable. 23 deaths. No one remembered their faces. No one made a film. No one asked, how did he get away with it? Maybe because the answer is too simple. He got away with it because we let him. Ronald Dominique's legacy isn't in the bodies. It isn't in the confession tapes. It isn't in the court files. His legacy is a void, a living proof that if you're poor, alone, different, and unloved, your death doesn't count. You vanish like trash, and the crime vanishes with you. Ronald murdered 23 people, and no one noticed, not because he was skilled, but because we were too busy looking elsewhere. And when he was caught, we still didn't look back. No memorials, no systemic reforms, no reckoning. No one was fired, no one took the blame, just names, crossed out, and a killer locked away, as if that made it right, as if none of it ever happened. But Ronald Dominique died to society long before he ever killed. His death came in silence, in pieces, through rejection, shame, isolation, an erasure, and in a broken circle, he passed that death on to those like him, the invisible ones. That's why his legacy isn't a row of corpses, it's a warning that if we don't change the way we see, the way we remember, the way we care, there will be more Ronald Dominiques, not famous, not caught, not remembered, just shadows drifting past one another and strangling each other in silence. Ronald Dominique is serving his sentence in a federal prison in Louisiana. No visitors, no letters, no one remembers. He exists there the way he lived the first 40 years of his life, quietly drifting like a shadow, swallowed whole by the very place that raised him. 23 people died by his hands, maybe more. Maybe we'll never know the real number. But what hurts more is this. If one man hadn't escaped, if there hadn't been day, if he hadn't run barefoot through the night, Ronald might still be killing today. Once again, you don't have to be a monster to kill. You just have to pick the right kind of victim and live in the right kind of place at the right moment in time when the world has grown tired of compassion. Ronald left behind no legend, nothing to glorify, only a cold void where justice never reached, where memory never stepped, where people learned to look away. And in that space, he lived, he killed, he smiled, he slept, he ate, and he vanished, not into blood, but into forgetting. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.